Japan has just moved a piece no one expected. For half a century, its economy revolved around an unquestionable relationship. The United States was the center, and Tokyo was its most disciplined partner. But that has changed. The Japanese government has begun a carefully managed withdrawal from United States debt, a move that even the most cautious analysts say marks the beginning of a new global financial era. For decades, this bond was the invisible pillar of the world economy. Washington issued debt, and Japan bought it. Tokyo provided stability, and in exchange it received market access and military protection. It was a perfect alliance, designed to survive any crisis. Until politics got in the way again. The turning point was Donald Trump's decision to impose new tariffs on Japan's automotive industry. For Tokyo, it was a clear message. If the most powerful ally in the world is willing to strike your economy, the relationship is no longer based on trust. That day marked the beginning of the split. First came internal debates, then emergency meetings at the Ministry of Finance, and finally the decision: reduce exposure to the dollar and diversify national reserves. What began as a technical maneuver has become a state strategy. Japan is selling billions in United States Treasury bonds and replacing them with gold, euros, and Swiss francs. The objective is clear: reduce dependence on the United States financial system. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has made it clear in every speech: economic security cannot depend on decisions made in another country. The magnitude of the shift is enormous. For years, Japan was the largest foreign creditor of the United States. Its role was so central that any movement could shake global markets. Today, that influence is becoming a defensive tool. The land of the rising sun is seeking to shield itself from an increasingly uncertain world, and from an ally that no longer offers the same guarantee of stability. In Washington, the news landed like a blunt hit. The Treasury fears that Japan's exit could trigger a domino effect. Because if the most loyal ally of the Western Bloc begins to doubt, everyone else will take note. And that is already happening. China has been reducing its dollar exposure for years, Saudi Arabia is diversifying its energy income, and several European central banks have begun adjusting their portfolios. Japan's move confirms that the era of the unquestionable dollar is ending. Tokyo does not present this decision as a rupture, but as a strategic update. However, beneath the diplomacy lies a message no one can ignore. Japan no longer fully trusts the United States. The reasons are clear. America carries more than $37 trillion in debt, spends more than it produces, and uses economic sanctions as a political tool. For Takaichi, depending on the dollar means accepting the risk of being trapped in a financial war that is not Japan's. That is why her administration has redefined the meaning of stability and sovereignty. The new Japanese economic doctrine is summarized in 3 principles: independence, resilience, and diversification. Independence to avoid relying on other nations' debt. Resilience to withstand global crises without collapsing. And diversification to reduce vulnerability to the dollar. Under this logic, Japan is raising its gold reserves to record levels, strengthening its currency, and building regional alliances to operate with local currencies. The Bank of Japan supports this strategy, even though it breaks with decades of tradition. For half a century, the country accumulated United States Treasury bonds as a symbol of stability. Today, that word means something different: control. Tokyo does not seek to destroy the system, but to avoid being trapped inside it. Markets react immediately. As Japan withdraws, bond yields rise and United States debt becomes more expensive to finance. Each additional point of interest means billions in new costs for Washington. The balance that sustained the global economy begins to strain. And although no one admits it publicly, many privately acknowledge that the dollar no longer inspires the same confidence. For the United States, this Japanese shift is an alarming sign, not because of the immediate impact, but because of what it represents. For decades, Washington's power depended not only on its economy but also on the loyalty of its allies. Now that loyalty is cracking. Japan, once the system's most faithful supporter, is acting like an independent player. And that example can spread. The Trump administration, however, continues to defend its protectionist policies. It argues that tariffs strengthen domestic production and reduce the trade deficit. But the reality shows another effect: the loss of trust. In Tokyo, it is interpreted as a turn toward American economic selfishness. And in the rest of the world, as confirmation that each country must find its own path. This process is not a loud break, but a silent fracture. There are no sanctions or threats, but the alliance is no longer the same. The United States needs buyers for its debt. Japan needs security for its future. And both goals are no longer compatible. Meanwhile, the new Japanese policy solidifies. Sovereign funds restructure their portfolios, corporations move capital back home, and domestic infrastructure investment multiplies. Tokyo is seeking not only stability but real independence. Its strategy is subtle yet firm: remain an ally of Washington, but not dependent on it. In practice, the result is a redesign of the world's financial map. The dollar remains the dominant currency, but no longer the only one. Gold is regaining prominence. The yuan and the euro are gaining space. And Japan, the country that sustained the stability of the United States for decades, is now becoming the symbol of a new era. The era of allies learning to say, enough. The message from Tokyo is clear and direct. Cooperation cannot be based on submission. Japan will continue working with the United States, but not at any cost. Trust is something earned, not a duty imposed. And in a world where economics has become the new geopolitics, Japan's move has the power to reorder global alliances. Because when an ally decides to protect its own future first, the balance of world power changes forever.